We are getting old.
My dream is to be a pilot. I want to be an architect.
Geologist.
You and I are growing further. You don't really talk to me.
Hey everyone, and welcome. We're here with the One Degree Alumni Podcast and episode 11. And today we've got Daniel, a One Degree past student from 2014. So 10 years ago, can't believe it. And really excited to have a little chat with Daniel. Hey Dan, how are you doing? How's it going today?
Everything's going well. How are you, Roger?
Yeah, really good, really good. Oh, so nice to have a catch up. I know it's been a long time since we've managed to have a good chat. So looking forward to chatting to you about all the things you can remember from 10 years ago, and finally obviously find out what you've been up to and what you're up to now. So I suppose just to dive right in, what can you remember about One Degree in 2014?
Well, what I can remember is that we had two sessions, one on Saturday and one Sunday, and we would go through English on one day and maths on the other day. And we also had food provided. I think it was Tops Pizzas or something like that. And we also had like some sort of activity going on where all the students got to interact with one another.
Well, you'll be happy to know Tops Pizzas is still supplying us with our lunch, so that's still going strong. And before you sort of started One Degree, was it something that you were excited about? Did you feel like, getting a bit of academic and personal development support was something you needed? Or did you kind of just, it wasn't really something you were too keen on, but you thought you'd give it a go anyway? How were your feelings leading up to it?
My case, and there was another person who was similar to me, we didn't make the initial cut for One Degree because we had already done our GCSEs the year prior, right? But the grade I had for my English GCSE in particular was too low for what I needed to do in the future. So One Degree gave me the opportunity to resit my English GCSE, which overall meant that I had more doors open for me when I was applying to university.
So it was mainly kind of English you were after, and did you get sort of support in other areas that was helpful as well, or were you mainly just focusing on the English?
I was mainly focusing on English per se because I really struggled with English in terms of like, generally my grades were all right, and even within the humanities subjects, my grades were usually A grades. But for English, it was always like just C, and it was like I was just barely passing with the C, and I had no idea what I was weak at and why I was weak at. I wasn't good at doing the English exam. I needed that extra bit of guidance and that extra bit of time to go through questions and problems, so that I can actually at least get a B, and then with that, because most unis require at least a minimum of a B grade to accept you onto their program.
Yeah. And so if you were to compare when you initially did your English GCSEs to when you resat them, how were the feelings going into those two exams?
I felt like I had a much better understanding of what the criteria was and what was expected of me when it comes to answering the questions. Prior to that, it was more freestyle with me, like, okay, I think this is how I would answer the question. Because that's generally how I approached all my subjects. I would just say, okay, this makes sense. I would spend the time inside the exam learning how to actually answer the exam questions.
Yeah. And that's so it's interesting because that's so often the case with English. So many students, and even myself, when I was doing my exams, you sort of approaching your English exam thinking, well, I can speak English, so this will be fine. I don't really need to have too much more information than that. But it is amazing how much structure is needed and how much sort of insight into what it is that they're looking for and where you can lose marks, more importantly, because it's not so much answering the question right or wrong. It's just you can just end up losing marks along the way before you get to the end of answering a question so quickly, can't you?
Yeah, that's like a big thing, because like I realized like I don't feel like there was any shortcomings in the points and ideas I had. It's simply in the execution that I delivered on was not adequate enough to get the right grade.
Yeah. And then big question, how did you end up doing when you finally resat your English exam?
After resetting, it wasn't a drastic jump, but it was what I needed. I got a B. I was 2 marks off an A. But wow. The important thing was that all I needed to do was to push up to get a B, and I needed the opportunity to work with One Degree because we already set our GCSE, so we're no longer covering that content during our while I was in year 11, because we did it in year 10. So okay. The opportunity, no one, the school wouldn't have allowed me to redo it.
But I mean, 2 marks off an A is amazing. I think that's fantastic, and it is really hard to make that jump up in English, because it does take a bit of work, and you obviously put the work in. So I think that's really amazing, even if it was 10 years ago. But and then what else can you remember about, like, maybe some of the soft skills or life skills or any of the other little things that you sort of picked up along the way that you might not have been there, to learn, but you kind of found that you learned along the way anyway?
I really like the fact where we had speakers come in to talk to us on like a weekly basis, and then also the mentors. But going back to the speakers, each speaker had walked a different path in life, and a lot of the paths were traditional and non-traditional. Some overcame the stereotypical routes that was paved in front of them to pave their own pathway that they believed. And generally, it was, what I really got out of it was each speaker spoke about how they shaped their own destiny through their actions and being proactive. And in a way, I try to adopt that as much as possible in trying to be proactive in the things I yearn for and wish to do well in. So I think that was really good. And then another thing was like we had a mentor, and we'll split it up into small groups. Each of these mentors were professionals from different backgrounds. Some of them were lawyers, some of them were economists, and they all had different levels of education. Some had an MBA, others had like a bachelor's. So in terms of like generating, in terms of like figuring out what you want to do in the future, it was a good playground to bounce ideas off between the different mentors to find out what you could possibly do in the future, what are the pathways, any other guidance, and their past experiences.
I love the way you described the different backgrounds of the mentors and the speakers and everything, and how, I mean, that's so crucial and so important to One Degree, just having that real mix of different characters, and like exactly like you said, like no life has got one journey, or one pathway. It really does vary. So, okay, can you remember any particular speakers or mentors? I'm putting you on the spot. It was a long time ago. So don't worry if you got.
It's not that. It's because when I also came back to volunteer, a lot of the speakers became a blurred event. So I'm confused between the ones that occurred at WA at Westminster Academy and the ones that occurred at Newman Catholic College, because it felt like, I remember at one time, I think this will happen at Newman Catholic College, but I don't know whether it was in my year or the year after me. It was it Aziz Ahmed from 4 Lines?
Okay. Oh yes, Riz Ahmed. Yeah.
Riz Ahmed. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I remember how he was telling the story about how he got into acting and everything, and that was one instance. Then there was one, I think this one occurred at WA. I wasn't, so I was there just assisting and helping. This was a lawyer who talked about how he had a vision of what he wanted to do. And he had been given the opportunity to work at Sainsbury's. He was working at Sainsbury's. He's working at Primark initially. And then he was now given the opportunity to open up his own store branch. And then he was going to be paid a 6-figure salary. But he already had a vision to, I want to be a lawyer. I want to go into law. And he said, so he rejected that offer. Then again, when he was working at Sainsbury's, he was also offered the same 6-figure salary again, and to open up his own branch, and he rejected the offer again and continued on forward to become a lawyer. Now he's also earned that same 6 figures, and he can have and then what he told us is that he took a whole month off for his birthday. Now he has the time to do whatever he wants, and he's also pursued the career that he wanted, and he managed to go to one of the best unis in the world. And that was because he didn't accept anything less. He just kept on saying, okay, I'm sorry, I can't take this. This is what I want to do. I'm sorry. And I really like that.
I love that story. I think was that Hashi Muhammad? Does that ring a bell?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. I remember he's done a few speaking slots with us, and it's such a good story, and he tells it so well. You're right. Oh, that's amazing. And were there any like snippets during your time there that you can still remember that you thought, oh, that's a good bit of advice? Obviously, you've shared something, from Hashi Muhammad, just sticking to your path and just going along, that line you want to. But was there anything else that you're still kind of living by now? Any nice little bits of advice or things that you still sort of draw on, 10 years later?
There's no there's nothing in particular I can pinpoint, but it's more of the different ideas, and like I never really thought about the different avenues you could take in life, and because we had people who they did a non-traditional, like some of the mentors start off with 1 degree and then they moved into something else, and showing that. And they also showed me, because a lot of them were complete in their MBA, even though they were roughly in their MBA or masters, they were doing additional qualifications, even though they were in their 30s and 40s and they've already worked for some time. It was never too late to go back and refresh and learn new things, and that you should never stop learning new things. Life is a continuous journey of discovery, and you should keep on just acquiring new information as you go along. Yeah, I love it. So speaking about avenues and all of that, tell us a little bit about after 1 degree, after you reset your exams, what you did immediately after that, and then the next couple of years of your life. We'll get to where you are right now, but later. But just initially, those first few years, in your late teens, what did you get up to then? So in my late teens, I went on to go to 6th form, where I studied maths, physics, chemistry, and biology. And at that point, I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I think I wanted to go into theoretical physics at that point. And then as I was going through, I was like, I don't like electricity. And so I gave up on physics and ended up studying chemical engineering at uni. And this whole my whole journey through uni and 6th form, starting from 6th form, I realized that I like my subjects, but I don't like my subjects. I didn't have the necessary passion that I needed to really push me forward within the subjects I chose. It was only while I was at uni that I started to get more clarity on what I actually want to do, what do I actually enjoy about my subjects and the things that I've studied in the past in terms of maths and physics, and then engineering, which I went to go and study. I studied chemical engineering at uni. And I realized that I really do like maths. And I may not be the best at it, but if I invest enough time into it, I'll become better than I was yesterday, which is the most important thing. I don't think people should compete with others per se. Life is about competing against the version of yourself from yesterday. And so I really went through a discovery of like focusing on learning and going back and making notes and learning new content, exploring new ideas, attending new seminars to just broaden my mind. Like, I have this principle of breadth and depth, right? So I need to have a broad range of knowledge across a wide, across different fields of studies, and then I'll pick within those the ones I need extra depth in that would give me a much more comprehensive view, so I can now apply new skills and transfer that knowledge to another area. And this was a tough journey because it meant that at times I didn't really, prior to this, I'd always cared about the exam grade because that's all everyone put emphasis on. But as I was getting older, I realized I'm doing this for myself. Like, I want to academically do well for myself, but then I also want to acquire this knowledge for myself for the future, for when I'm 30, 40, 50, or 60, or 70. And so I really sometimes sacrifice my grades to focus on actually learning the content. And in the end, it did pay off because I did manage to graduate with first class. But it was a tough journey in the sense that, like, I had to really be willing to risk everything over something I'm not sure would actually pay off at the time. And then I went on to do my master's, and I gained more clarity as of the things I did like and what I did want to do. But then the path I was supposed to take was still ambiguous to me. I knew I wanted to study a PhD. I wanted to go on to do a PhD, but I still wasn't sure of what I want to do for a PhD. And it's only recently I've started to get some clarity on it, but then it's now finding the actual PhD program. And it's just been a journey of me just continuously learning more stuff and trying to figure out the path I should go down. And I feel like it was like, as long as I continuously learn, I can gain a better sense of who I want to be and the path I should take.
So much to actually unpack, or so many things I want to ask you about what you've just said, because you've got such an amazingly mature and really sort of level-headed approach to the way you've attacked this over the last few years and everything. So I mean, that's amazing in itself. But first of all, the breadth and depth, where did you find out about that philosophy? Where did that come from? Because it's amazing the way you've described that.
So the breadth and depth came from, I think, like, partially from reading. I think I started reading across a wide range of topics. So I ended up going into philosophy at some point. And when I was looking at ideas from philosophy, I started to notice that there's a trend, like, these elementary ideas that we learn in philosophy now can be represented in a way in terms of mathematical logic and sense. And then I started understanding that the different subjects I've learned over the years stem from philosophy. This idea of thinking and then thinking about a problem. And then maths gave us a way to capture how these thoughts can be represented in a way these abstract thoughts can be represented in a format that we can now do manipulation, that we can manipulate to get a certain answer. and then other fields now built on top of that. So I start to see the depth, right? And I could see how the overall subjects branch out, and that creates some sort of breadth. And so I really wanted to learn as much as possible, but then also at the same time not get too bogged down by the overall how expansive the breadth is. So that's why I understood that depth in certain areas will help me just focus in and gain actual worth in those subject areas that I do value the most.
Has that helped you with something which is so important these days, something like critical thinking, by having that approach, do you think?
I do believe so. Like in terms of like when you approach a problem, a lot of the skills that I've picked up from learning maths about how to sit down, extract the information that is that really stands out and is important. Now imagine what that actual scenario is, draw like some sort of image that represents that, and dealing with the concepts of abstraction, like in order to like abstract reasoning, right? To make things seem, to put into a format that you can now formulate a solution from. Like it's helped in how I approach problems, and then it's influenced me to actually like writing. Like when I did English at GCSE, I didn't quite understand the actual purpose of writing. But I did understand that in history when it came to analyzing problems. And as I developed a much wider breadth, I realized the importance of writing down my ideas. And this concept of going breadth and depth. So when you start writing to conceptualize your ideas, or to just evaluate the general thoughts, you would go through a series of books and media or documents that are relatively wide in breadth, and then you gradually, I think it's like, so you start off with convergent thinking, and then you gradually now go into that you divergent thinking, and then you now go down to convergent thinking to a single point. And then you can start really, during that process, you've gathered a lot of different sources, then you now start to think critically about those sources, and then you can write about that, and it helps you view the world in a different way. When I was much younger, I had a slight disdain for politics, but now I see the worth of understanding politics and how that plays out in my own day-to-day life. All these political decisions have a great impact on everything that I'm experiencing in life. And so it gives me a framework to try and actually tackle my problems and start to think more deeply about what I can possibly do in the future and in the present.
Yeah, nice. And just jumping back to uni for a minute, you mentioned that, it was tough, and a lot of people sort of do find it tough. And for, I suppose, in the context of young people looking to go into university, if you're happy to share it, what did you find tough, and what experiences did you learn that you'd like to pass on to someone who's about to go into university that might be helpful to know?
The first thing I learned that is you don't necessarily need to rush into uni quickly. Like, I think the time to sit back and actually talk and discuss what you actually want to do with your life. There's a lot of new opportunities that you can possibly do. It wasn't as common when I was applying to uni, but there's now apprenticeships that could get you a lot faster onto the path that you want, while still giving you equivalent qualifications. So it's about spending the time to research what you actually want to do. And so that's the first thing I would do. And then second thing, like if you decide to go to uni, pick it doesn't matter too much where you go in terms of like the rankings of the uni. It's more to do with your mindset as you go into the uni. You get as much out as you put in. But at the same time, what different rankings of unis and different unis do provide you with is different access to different thought processes. Like some lecturers and educators in some unis take a different approach to others in other. So one can take experimental, one can take a theoretical. So it depends on which parts, which ways you sway more towards. And some are better in certain subjects than others. Like Imperial, for example, is if you want to do a STEM subject and you want it to be practical and maybe entrepreneurial at the same time, Imperial is a good place to go. If you want a more vocational route, maybe approaching London South Bank might be a viable option. There's a lot of people who are very practical. There's a lot of people who come in from companies, and there's ways to do apprenticeships through South Bank or other unis as well. And there's different ways of just learning. And in terms of like actually going through uni, even though you've started a course, it doesn't mean you have to end on that course. A lot of people still make changes, and if you're applying through student finance and that they're funding you, student finance also allows you to make these changes. A lot of my friends converted from completely different courses. One of my friends converted from English literature to biomedical sciences, right? And so it's like you have the ability to start something and not necessarily finish it, and you should capitalize on that. Find out what you do like and focus on that as much as possible.
No, go on, sorry.
No, that's a very big thing I want to make clear. Like, you don't have to suffer. One of my other friends also did, he started off engineering, chemical engineering with me. Then he went on to mechanical engineering at another uni. And then he ended up doing a maths degree at the end. And it's just, he spent that time, he said, I really want to know what I want to do. I want to know what I want to invest my life into. And he went through that explorative journey. At the same time, it's fine to not go through all these changes. I stick with chemical engineering all the way up until my master's. And that was partially because I still wasn't sure, even if I switched, what would I switch to? And you can still make that switch after you finish your studies. Like, the job market is flexible in that sense, depending on what degree you studied, right? There's a lot of different opportunities. It's about whether you're willing to learn after you finish your degree to work towards whatever you want to do in life.
Yeah, some great insight. Thanks so much. So let's jump to present day now. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, what the situation is, and what some of those next steps might be for you.
So right now I am working as a engineering lecturer and a technician. And so I primarily set up different experiments as a technician for the faculty if they wish to run some sort of experiments. And at the same time, I also teach engineering maths. So I would act as I would teach maybe stuff like linear algebra and how it intersects with us dealing with vectors in space and like general physics concepts like we use in engineering, or maybe some chemistry concepts like we use in engineering. That's basically relying on my background from chemical engineering. At the same time, I also recently started this, for now it's pretty much like a study group where we explore generative AI and how it could be used within education. And we don't just want to focus on education. It's simply that my background is from education, and so that was the first thing that we thought that we should push forward towards, especially as a lot of students have started to use generative AI within their work and their coursework. How best for them to use it effectively without relieving them of their agency. And this comes back to what you mentioned about critical thinking. We want the students to engage with it, generative AI technologies with a critical mind, so that they can actually still learn, but at the same time hand in work that is that they can be proud of and that they've put in actual effort towards. And so it's just the exploration of these are the different things I've been doing since I've left education, and I've just been trying to flesh that out a bit more and think about what I can do. But that's mainly in my spare time, so it hasn't grown as much as I hoped, but it's getting there.
Super impressive, though, all that stuff. I mean, from the lecturing and right through to the AI stuff, it's super impressive. And what ideas have you got for the next 5 years or the next few years at least? You know.
Oh, were you gonna say something?
No, go for it.
In the next 5 years, I'm hoping to maybe start my PhD. I'm looking to do my PhD in at the intersection of computational neuroscience with mathematics. Hopefully, I get into a good PhD program, but along that, I also want to develop the study group into something that is much more tangible and actually have an actual impact. As it is now, it seems more like we're exploring how to use generative AI as a tool to help students with their general education, and as well as academics and lecturers and academics, teachers, and all those involved within the education sector, how to use it within their general workflow. But in the future, what I would like to do is have exploration of how different technology could actually be used by the general populace, because a lot of technology initiatives are usually adopted by large companies and is made at the enterprise level and targeted at them. I'm hoping that what my friends and I have set up can possibly be more applicable to the average man and average layman, and help them also capitalize on these new forms of technology.
I mean, I'm really looking forward to catching up with you in a few years' time and seeing how that's all come along and where you've got to in that, because that's super, super interesting. So just to round off this chat, and it's been amazing catching up with you, and I'd love to explore some of the things you've mentioned a bit deeper in maybe a separate podcast where we can, focus in on some of the learnings that you've had over the years, and some of the skills you've learned. But to round up this one, I wonder if I could put you on the spot and have a think about what advice you can give a 15 or 16-year-old about to go into the GCSEs, really struggling with, several factors in their life at the moment. You've mentioned a few things already. We've spoken about critical thinking being important. We've spoken about, the grades aren't everything, and you just obviously want to, explore that journey of learning. And what you put in, is what you're going to get out. You've mentioned all those things. Is there anything else you want to add on to that? Or do you think that covers it for now?
I think the only thing I would add is that, a thing that's always helped me to get through the tough times of my life, it's hobbies. I find that, by partaking in hobbies, not only do you do something that you enjoy and like, you also meet people that have those similar interests to you, right? And that means when you're going through your problems, they can pick up on it and you can talk about it with them. There's a community there to support you. And at the same time, by doing these hobbies, you're improving yourself and you're learning new skills and putting yourself out of your comfort zone by interacting with new people and picking up new skills that will stay with you for the rest of your life. So I think that's the only thing I can possibly add to that.
I love that one, and I've not heard that one as someone's put that forward to advice for GCSE students. I'm so glad that you did, because that's such a good one, and that's so nice. I really like it. And then finally, once again, obviously you've mentioned a few things, and you're a bit of a philosophy student as well, that you mentioned you like to read up about that. So what about sort of just general advice that you always fall back on, if you're having a tough time, or something that's just really helped you through maybe the last 10 years or so, just a good stable bit of life advice? Have you got anything that sort of falls into that category for you?
I think, like, when I like to either write, or if I can't write, talk. If I write and talk through the problems that I'm facing, I've listed it down, then I can now probably think about whether it's solvable or not solvable. If it's not solvable, then there's no point in me worrying about it. If it is solvable, what can I do to solve it? Then I write down or talk through how to solve that problem and the feasibility of the solution I've provided myself. I would then probably assess it and then try to enact it when I can. And then that way, it's like I solved the problem, even though I haven't actually started the process or have moved halfway through it. The first thing is to at least get down the problem on paper or talk it through, so that you actually have it out there instead of it just being stuck in your mind.
And you can tell you're a student of maths and engineering. That's so practical. That's such a good way of laying it out. That's fantastic. Daniel, listen, it's been amazing catching up with you, as we could chat for ages because there's so much to actually explore. But for today's chat, thank you so much. It's been really good finding out, what you've been up to, where you've been, what you're doing right now. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
To everyone watching this, you've been listening to One Degree Alumni Stories and podcast. My name's Roger from One Degree, and you've been listening to Daniel, and this has been episode number 11 of the One Degree Alumni Stories podcast. So we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.